Hi everybody, and welcome back to today's Love Transformation class. I'm joined today by the beautiful Cami Elen, and we've got a really interesting conversation that some of you may relate to and some of you may be really intrigued to find out more about, and that is where we're potentially looking for love in all the wrong places. And we're going to go really deep on what that means and some of the self-sabotaging patterns that arise as a result of looking for love in all the wrong places. So welcome, Cami.
Thank you so much, Peter, for having me. I'm so happy to be here on your event.
It's super great to have you.
Thank you. Yeah, and I'm really, I really love talking about this topic. This is something I'm really committed to supporting women and men, people who are seeking great love in their lives, to look at why they haven't been able to really get the kind of love that they're deeply desiring. What's been getting in their way? What have been those stumbling blocks? Because sometimes it's outside of our conscious awareness about why we just can't get it right for whatever reason. So, this idea of looking for love in all the wrong places and how this happens. And we're going to talk about what the antidote is as well. So this is something that can be overcome so that people can be really liberated and freed up from old patterns that are no longer serving them, to really create healthy, conscious, mutually fulfilling, loving, joy-filled, passionate relationships. So why don't we look at, these self-defeating patterns in love. Everybody has them. Core beliefs, false beliefs, limiting beliefs that lead to behavior patterns that can become this kind of self-defeating cycle. And we've all come by them honestly, because we get a little toolbox from our upbringing. We learn about attachment and about love and about what love means, any messaging we received about love, the kinds of communications and connection and consistency of attachment and care that existed in our families of origin. And then the corresponding beliefs and behaviors that we adopted as a result in response. All of that together contributes to our core beliefs about love. Limiting stories that we have about our own worth and our own value, our own lovability, and the possibility of the kind of love, that we're deeply desiring. And what we experienced growing up as children ends up affecting our own feelings of self-esteem and self-acceptance, and shapes how we seek love. And a lot of this just happens, as I said earlier, outside of our conscious awareness. And so, growing up with that, I like to say that we end up kind of wearing these filters or these glasses, these lenses that we end up seeing life through. And we end up making choices and decisions as a result that are reflecting these beliefs that we're carrying around with us in our bodies. And they are things like, I'm not good enough, or I'm unworthy, or I'm not valuable, or I'm alone, or people never choose me. We all have different types of those. And then what we end up doing is making choices that actually make those beliefs feel true when they're really not true. They're just that when we're small, we lack the capacity and to hold complexity about what's happening in our circumstances and our surroundings. And we're so small that everything is about us. And so it's like, well, if mom or dad or our caretakers aren't there for me in that way, it must mean that I'm not worthy of love, or it must mean that I'm alone, when really it's just that they didn't have the tools either, or you don't know what was really going on at the time, but whatever it was, we lack the complexity to really have the understanding, so we walk around with those beliefs. And then what happens is when it comes to love, we end up choosing people that reflect back those beliefs to us. So we end up having the experience of feeling not good enough, feeling not valuable enough, feeling alone, or feeling like our needs don't matter, because we were literally programmed that way growing up. And please cut me off at any time if you want to comment on anything, because I'll just keep talking.
I think it's so important, and it is a common theme across what we're really trying to communicate to the beautiful ladies in this virtual retreat, is that our experience of love when we're younger, how much that is really tied into our experience of creating romantic love, and particularly when we're not getting the results that we want, creating that beautiful romantic love as an adult, just how complex that can be in relation to our childhood experiences, particularly between the ages of 0 to 7, right?
Yes. Yeah, and we're even finding too that research shows also that some of this can even actually happen in utero. You know, if you were, if a mother was, if there was a lot of anxiety or trauma or depression or something like that happening with the mother, even in utero, we can pick up on that, because a lot of it is, it's sensory, it's somatic. That's, which is why, and when it comes to, you know, what we call triggers in love, when we have something happen with a suitor, we're dating, something happens and we get that feeling of anxiety in our chest, or a feeling like it's hard to breathe, or we feel flushed, all of a sudden we get this bodily response, because there's something that's implicit memory. It's outside of words, and it's more in the body. It's something that just, it's like when the doctor takes that little hammer and hits your knee and your knee pops. It's the same kind of thing. We get triggered because these things happened so long ago. They're just really in our bodies and our systems. And those things, when that happens, it's that old stuff popping up, having those old beliefs come up in that moment, that something feels so familiar in that moment that it takes us back, and we're reacting in the present to something really that was in the past, but we're bringing it into the present. And so in dating and love, it's so important to start to make some of this conscious, so that people can see what it is that might be showing up for them in love, and to start to recognize it, and to really start to name it, to start to turn towards it, to start to learn how to self-soothe, to start to learn how to respond versus react, and to be able to turn some of these old false beliefs into, you know, to really get anchored and grounded in what really is true, what the deeper truth is about who you are and what's possible for you in the area of love. And really feeling an inherent sense of enoughness and value and worthiness and lovability and confidence. And we can sit here and, you know, we can intellectualize it a lot of times and, you know, feel like, well, I know I'm good enough, or I know I'm lovable, or, but it's really like, if we do that, it's from the neck up, and it's kind of intellectualizing it. And I'm really glad that in your event that you are having some speakers who are doing mindfulness and meditations and visioning and all of that. It's so important to do that, because it really helps to shift that bodily experience, so that we can really start to get connected to what's happening in our bodies. And nowadays we're also busy. We're always going. We're everybody on our social media. We're making things happen in careers. We have so much going on that it's so easy for us to be distracted from our own inner lives. So to take the time to be able to sit and to meditate, or to do breath work, or to walk in nature, or to journal, to just be with yourself. It's so important for us to be able to do that. That helps us to be able to reprogram, and to be able to start to pause before the impulse, before the action, to be able to take a pause and to be able to notice, oh, wow, he just said this and I had this really strong reaction. What's going on with that? Let me just pause for a minute. And if I tune in and feel into what just happened, let me get underneath that trigger, because the trigger is making me want to, yell, or it's making me want to run out the door, or it's making me want to say something nasty or hang up or whatever it is. But if you really get into those feelings underneath, what's really going on? Let me just pause for a minute. Wow, I'm really feeling like my needs aren't being met, or I'm really feeling like I'm somehow not enough, or I'm feeling like I'm a burden if I speak up about my needs. That's really interesting. Let me get grounded. That's that younger part of you being activated. Then learning how to get really anchored back into the truth of who you are, into our adult, wise, resourceful, feminine, radiant self. And then to hold and contain that part of you so that you then can respond from the truth of who you are and soothe that part of you. So the mindfulness is a really important part of doing that, in the process of doing that inner work. So I'll take a pause. So
I love that you stress the importance of really doing that. And also, I think a lot of us, because sometimes those triggers that we have particularly when we're in a new relationship and it's feeling unfamiliar, and when those new triggers come up, those new little insecurities and mini anxieties and things, I think they do feel so powerful. Sometimes that practice of learning that there's a small space in between when I feel the trigger and when I react, and sitting in and doing that practice really widens that space, so that, because our interactions with men can really make us feel like it's not bringing out the best of us when those triggers come up, doesn't it?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And I have a really simple way to start to get connected to that part of the self. Starting to think about mindfulness practices and meditations, and sometimes it can feel daunting because, you can feel like, well, I don't really have time to sit for 30 minutes on the cushion and I'm really busy. But I have something that people can do for literally 1 to 2 minutes. It's super simple. And it's just asking yourself 2 questions. The first question is, what am I feeling? And the second question is, what am I needing? And just taking a moment to close your eyes and to go within. So this can happen when you get triggered, or it can just be when you wake up in the morning, or at some point during your day, or at night, just to sit with yourself and to just ask yourself, what am I feeling? Oh, I can see that you're feeling anxious. You can ask yourself that a couple of times just to get related to what's there. And then, what am I needing? Oh, I can see that you're needing connection. Or I can see that you're needing sustenance. You need to eat, whatever it is. But just literally taking the time and space to do that. How often do we ask ourselves that, right? What am I feeling? Just taking the time to do that.
And one of the things that I also have noticed is that when it comes to feeling triggered like that, it's so easy to feel as though it's the other person that did that to us, and to sort of blame the guy. But then we also notice that we might have had a pattern of that happening in a number of relationships. So I think what's beautiful is this practice and what you're sharing is allowing us to say, you know what, I have control over this. I can really take some ownership over this to start creating a different result, rather than just blaming it on the types of men that we're attracting, right?
Yes. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. We always have to see what the common denominator is in all the relationships that have gone the same way with the same pattern. Oh, I was in all of them. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, it's important to turn the mirror towards ourselves and to take full responsibility, to have self-responsibility for how we have been showing up. And, you know, it's good to recognize the patterns and just to talk about some of the patterns, because people might feel like some of these are familiar, but, you know, having not being connected to and not yet being in the space of conscious awareness of these patterns could create things like feeling needy in relationship, or rushing into an instant relationship, choosing to be pursuing someone who is unavailable, feeling that attraction, mistaking attraction and chemistry for actual, you know, love, and then being in a relationship that's never quite getting to the finish line because of that intense connection and chemistry. Could be, like you just said, feeling like you keep being attracted to the same type of person, the same thing keeps happening over and over. Feeling like you're more inside of a place of like the fantasy of who someone is rather than the reality of who they are. Getting into like a lot of drama, having a feeling of being afraid of being alone. So staying in something because you'd rather be in that than be alone, even though it's not the right relationship. Overreacting, having a lot of worry or anxiety. What else? Feeling, putting more importance on passion rather than things like friendship, companionship, commitment, true connection, honesty, communication. Those kinds of things can happen when we haven't really taken a look at what these patterns are and really named them and started to shift them. So I think that one of the things that you can do that is an antidote to this is what we've been talking about already, which is mindfulness. Super, super important, because you literally have these neural pathways in the brain that have been created, and you're operating through those as well. And I talked about the body and the somatic aspect, but it's also the brain. So the mindfulness aspect, even doing those 2 minutes and starting slowly, you're also like reprogramming your brain as well, your brain and your body, and doing inner work. So working with a coach or a therapist and talking about some of this and processing, and then at the same time doing that somatic work and the mindfulness, all of it all together works so well to help to identify the patterns and help to shift them. So that's super important. And as you're doing that, you're building your self-esteem and your self-compassion and self-love. And I feel like really calling in love and partnership, one of the things that is really helpful around that and around self-love is really focusing on your own fulfillment, your mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual fulfillment. So really looking at what is it that you're doing that is lighting you up in those areas. How are you fulfilled emotionally and mentally and physically and spiritually? And spiritually, that can mean anything to you, whether it's actually religion or meditation or being out in nature. It's whatever it means to you. and filling yourself up in those ways and really bringing yourself the kind of fulfillment and satisfaction that would then have you become so radiant and so magnetic to a potential partner. So that is another part of this too, as well as really taking good care of your body, your self-care, your well-being, and stepping outside your comfort zone. So a part of shifting some of these things is these inner beliefs and triggers and ways of being and ways of showing up are starting to show up in ways that might feel like a risk. So, for example, if you have been showing up in your life inside of, say, for example, you have identified that one of your false beliefs is that you're a burden. And if you have needs in relationship and you speak your needs in relationship, that it's not going to go well because you'll be seen as a burden. And so you don't speak up normally. So if you start to practice speaking up and really sharing your voice, at first, it's probably going to feel daunting because you haven't done it. It's just you're out of practice. So stepping outside of your comfort zone and starting to do things that would be aligned with, oh no, I'm not a burden. I have the right to have needs. I have the right to have desires, and that's healthy. And I have the right for support, and I have the right to use my voice. And so starting to practice what that looks like at first might seem like a risk, but then the more that you do the things, the actions, the way of being that are aligned with the truth of who you are, it starts to get easier and starts to slowly, organically become where you're living from.
That's so beautiful. I wanted to ask you, this is a little bit of a segue actually, but I know a lot of us, times are changing and we're very much modern women in the 21st century, but I know so many of us still feel a sense of social expectation that we should be at a certain place at a certain time of our life, when we have family and friends asking, so when are you going to get married? Mm-hmm. When we have, we sort of feel, and sometimes we take on some of that pressure and that responsibility. How, in order to live our most fulfilled life as a single woman, what sort of advice do you have about how we kind of tackle this challenge of managing social expectations, managing our own expectations of where we should be at a certain point in our life with regards to our relationship status?
One of the first things when I'm working with people that I think is super important to look at is your vision. And that is your vision, for relationship. When we're talking about love and relationship, what is your vision for love and relationship? What does that look like for you? And it's going to look different for everybody. Some people feel like, I really see myself partnered. I really see myself married. I really see myself with children. I have this vision of what that's going to look like. Then someone else might say, well, I do see myself partnered and married, but I don't want children. Or someone else sees partnered, living together, but no marriage, no children. I mean, everyone's different with what they want. So what I would say is it's super important to know what your vision is, to get really clear on what that is for you, and to stay true to it. And to know that what I was saying before about living your most fulfilled life, even if you don't have that yet in your life yet, but living your life as a woman who loves herself and is just completely lit up by her life, who is showing up as a high value woman, making choices and actions and decisions that are aligned with what she's wanting to bring into her life. You don't owe anyone any apologies for that, and any choices that you make that are aligned with that. And I think as women, a lot of times, it's kind of socialized into us that it's not okay for us to have needs in that way, or to say yes, or to say an authentic no. there's a lot of times there's, shame and guilt, like, oh, I can't do that, or I can't want that, or I can't say that, or that's too much, or what are people going to think? And so in a way, I feel like taking a stand for that is taking a stand not only for yourself, but for women everywhere, to really be a role model for what that looks like, to be able to really be an authentic yes and an authentic no, and to really honor what it is that you're wanting to bring into your life. And it might not look the way someone else thinks it should look, or when it should be, or how it should be, but just to be honoring what really, really is your deepest desire, and to be living your life in alignment with that.
And the beautiful part about that, just tying back into being modern women in the 21st century as well, is that we actually do have so much more freedom now to be able to create that vision that we want. And I know there's still a lot of us still feel social pressure and a societal expectation. I know I never had any desire to have children. And so a lot of my early relationship choices weren't guided by the fact that I had a sense of urgency about finding a husband and finding a family. And I did feel a lot of pressure, a lot of pressure that, particularly coming into my late 30s, it's sort of now or never. You have to make that decision if you want to have a family. And I'm so proud now that I stuck to what I felt was true to me. And I feel like that so many other women now are seeing that there are more choices available than to follow the traditional path of relationships before, which is really, really amazing. Did you have anything else to sort of add to that?
No, I think you said that really well, that we are at a time in history where there are so many different avenues and pathways and doorways that are open for women, and so much more than at any time in history. So, it's really just tuning in to what works for you and where do you see yourself going. And also too, another thing I want to add to that is believe that what you are desiring is possible. Because that's another thing that I see a lot, is this sense of feeling like, well, I want this, but I don't know if it's even possible. And if you don't feel like something's really possible, then you are not probably going to really be moving into creation. And that comes back to full circle to what we sort of were talking about before, about, well, let's look at what's going on that has you feel that it's not possible. Let's really get you into possibility so that of course, this is so possible, and it's just a matter of time, and I'm going to be showing up in a way that I believe that it's possible, and that's going to help to have it be so.
Absolutely. And I think for many of us, we are actually creating a vision of something that's not familiar to us. We may not have had someone model those types of relationships. And so I love what you're sharing, because it is encouraging us women to really dream and check in with what the vision is that resonates most with us, rather than trying to find a model of a type of relationship that we think best fits.
And there might be a role model of relationship out there. Maybe someone in the community has the kind of relationship that you really look to as, wow, I really would love to have what they have. Or maybe there's someone that you don't know. Maybe it's, could be someone in media, or it's some kind of somewhere that isn't in your personal sphere. But I think having role models too of relationship is helpful too. Like, what is it that appeals to you about that? What are the qualities or aspects that you sense that are important to you about that? Who do you think you would need to be being to create that for yourself? And, to be looking at, sometimes it's easy for us to look to the partner. Well, the partner needs to be this and the partner needs to be that. And, well, who are you inside of that partnership, and what are you bringing, and what are the qualities that together, we're wanting to create, reciprocity and mutuality. So who are you being in service to having that in your life? And how are you showing up as that today? How are you showing up as that now in your
Yes,
life?
that's so, so important. I love that. We have this massive checklist of all these things that we desire from a partner. And sometimes it's better to flip that checklist and make sure, am I a match for the kind of amazing partner that I'm looking for? What would be some other sorts of questions and reflections and things? So who am I? How am I showing up? What else could we reflect on and question about ourselves in order to show up that way?
Well, I think this comes back to, again, what we were talking about before. So, when we're looking at the core beliefs, sometimes when we're trying to shift those and transform those, it's helpful to see, okay, well, if that wasn't who I am, then who would I be being? Like I talked about before, like the I'm a burden. I don't speak up for myself. I don't use my voice. I don't presence my needs. Oh, so that's going to be, so if I want to be showing up in my fullest, my best, my highest, I'm going to honor my voice. I'm going to be in touch with my needs. I'm going to presence myself. I think it's really helpful to think about the qualities and aspects of who you would want to be being. And sometimes first it's helpful to look at, so how have I been showing up until now in relationship? Let's just kind of do a checklist. I've been, doing X, Y, Z. I've been choosing partners who aren't capable of meeting me in the type of relationship I'd like to have, or I've been choosing partners who aren't able to commit, or I haven't been noticing red flags in relationship, like substance problems, or issues with finances, or choosing partners who don't have the same vision that I do for partnership. Just looking at all the different things to try and start to erase the mystery of why things have gone the way they have up to now, and then start to see, well, who would I be being? I would be very clear about what it is I'm seeking for partnership. As I just said a minute ago, I would be really in touch with my inner desires, my feelings, my thoughts. I would be making time and space for myself. I would be practicing presencing those needs in relationship. I would be choosing a partner who is in alignment with my vision, someone who truly wants partnership. I would be taking care of my own well-being. I mean, if you can just keep writing and journaling to really get into who it is that you would be being, it's different for everyone. But I really think that that's important too, to then have your list of the qualities, who you want to be being in partnership and who you want to be showing up as in love, relationship, and in life. And it's kind of like your own inner GPS. And you can check in with yourself to see, am I showing up in a way that is this who I am being on a daily basis? Or have I kind of gone back to some of these old patterns? It keeps you really honest and accountable, and helps, because you can see, well, okay, well, if I'm still doing these old behaviors that have gotten me to where I've gotten up to now with my love relationship choices, then I'll keep getting more of the same unless I continue to do these new things. So it's a good way. I really recommend that people have it in writing, like in a journal or somewhere where they can look at it to see the commitment to themselves about who they want to be being. I call them the queen qualities, the queenly qualities that you want to be inside of in service to calling in someone who is the right partner for you.
Beautiful. And I know, Cami, that you have an amazing 4-part video series to share with the audience. Before we talk a little bit about that, I wanted to just kind of just touch on what you mentioned before, and that is that still feeling triggered in some cases, or still feeling anxious, or still feeling insecure or nervous perhaps in relationships, and how that can be a sign that there's still work that we need to do. What about for the ladies watching, is there a guide or a way that we can know, okay, I'm seeing someone new and some of this stuff's coming up, that we can know, is it because I'm choosing the wrong person who's particularly triggering me, or I'm finding it difficult to establish boundaries with, or there's red flags, or if it's someone that perhaps I should stay with and it's just my old stuff and it's just a sign that I should need to work through. Do you have any advice or guidance? Is there any kind of way we might be able to tell the difference between the two?
So I think, as I was saying before, I think it's super important to start to cultivate a relationship with yourself. And the dating process is an excellent an excellent opportunity to start doing that. Because you can be going out and, dating different people, and maybe you go on coffee dates, or then you're dating someone else for a few different dates. Well, use the dating as an opportunity to get more connected to yourself. Show up on the dates with your first attention on you and yourself, and then your second attention on the other person. And you can kind of loop your attention between first attention on myself, how am I feeling, what am I sensing, second attention on the other person, present, available, receptive, back to myself, just looping. Sometimes we forget to have that attention and focus, on ourselves. So use this opportunity to be able to sense into, well, what am I feeling right now? I'm feeling kind of nervous. What is that feeling about? Is it a red flag, or is it kind of butterflies? What is that? Tune in and ask yourself. The more that you have that cultivation of that relationship with yourself, the more you'll be able to sense, you'll be able to have clarity about distinguishing between, is this a trigger? Is this a red flag? Is this just some of my old stuff coming up, and I need to just kind of ride that wave and self-soothe? So I think that it's a process, something that we can get better at distinguishing what our feelings are, and if there are those old triggers, or anxiety, or butterflies, or excitement, and then be able to make decisions from there.
And that's a really important decision, isn't it? Being able to tell the difference between our insecurities and what we intuitively know, because it really guides so much of our journey on the way to love. I'm excited for you to share with us about your Luscious Love video series and what the audience can learn from that.
Great. Yeah. So I'll talk more about some of what I've talked about today. I created the series to really support women to be able to create more love in their lives. And so we'll be looking more deeply about vision, what I talked about earlier, really coming up with a really juicy, clear vision. To be able to put aside any past disappointments that might be blocking experiencing great love in your life, how to avoid sabotaging your success along the way, and then really how to step into becoming a more confident and radiant and magnetic woman, anchored in your value and your confidence, someone who's truly inspiring a great love. So that's what I am happy to offer to everybody who's viewing.
Thank you. There's some beautiful wisdom there that I know applies to all of us beautiful single ladies. So I would encourage everyone watching to click the button directly below the video, and you can have access to Cami's 4-part video series, which is completely free to our Summit viewers. So make sure you grab a copy of that. If you'd like to become part of Cami's community and find out more about her, of course, all of her information is also below the video, and all of her social media links as well. So make sure that you connect up and become part of her community as well. Is there anything else that you'd like to share before we finish today's session, Cami?
Oh, I just loved our conversation so much, and I appreciate so much being a part of the event and all of the resources and amazing speakers that you're offering to everyone. So just encouraging everyone to soak it all up. And I thank you so much for having me be a part of it.
Thank you so much, beautiful one, for joining us, and thanks for tuning in today for today's Love Transformation class. We will see you again tomorrow. Make sure you download all of today's daily activations tools and videos, and if you have any comments or questions, pop over to the Facebook page and join us there. Bye for now.